Before I begin the video, I just want to flag, as always, that I am not a qualified financial advisor and nothing I say should be considered as financial advice. Hello, I'm the Jolly Saver, and in this video I'm going to talk about my investment journey in 2024 and how much my investments increased by in the past year. So as I mentioned at the bit of the start of the video, I'm not a financial advisor, so I won't be going into the specifics of what I invest in, but to be transparent, what I will say is that I hold my investments within a stocks and shares ISA. I invest in global index funds. So any of the investments I talk about, I don't invest in, haven't picked individual stocks in companies. That's not the type of investing that I do. It's all kind of broader global index funds. So actually how I've set up my spreadsheet is that I do it on financial years, but actually I haven't done it before where I look at a calendar year in total and look at what I started with, what I ended with, and what those gains or losses were. And I think that's quite a useful exercise. So I not automatically do that with my mortgage overpayment updates. So I thought, why not do it with my investments as well? So what I am going to do, first of all, I'm going to use this tab of the spreadsheet where I show my December figures, and then I've got a tab which just looks at all the 12 months of 2024 and gives a total figure. And then I have a tab which has some graphs on the overall figures, so looking at the lifetime of my investing journey and how it has been going. So at the end of November, I had an investment balance of £8,959, and November was a particularly positive month for me with my investment returns because it increased by £417. Now, I'm not an economist, but from reading newspapers and media, it seemed that the election in the US had a positive impact on the markets. So let's have a look at December. So started with the 8,959. I contributed £50. So people who've watched a few of these videos will be familiar with that. In the past, I was investing a couple of £100 a month. But given that I need to build up my emergency fund, I have been trying to consistently invest, but by small amounts, so I keep up the habit, with the hope that in a few months I'll be able to ramp that back up to where it was before once I've built up an emergency fund to the level that I am happy with. So yeah, invested £50, which is great. The income returns, so this is any money I get through dividends or any interest on the cash I have in the account. So you can see the months here where it's around £12 or £20. They are the months where I get paid the quarterly dividends. I always get confused. Quarterly, like maybe it's every 3 months. Yeah, quarterly, as every 3 months I get paid. Yeah. So those are those months, whereas December was a month where it was only a couple of p that the return was. So I think that is the cash that was held within my stocks and shares ISA that does accrue some interest. I mean, it's a very low interest rate, but because of the cash I had there, it accrued 2p in interest. Now, the market gain or loss. So, I could have expected this because normally when you have a really positive month or couple of months, you can normally expect that there'll be a loss, the next month. So actually the December figure was minus £94. And if people are familiar with kind of long-term investing and what that journey looks like over time, I expect that there'll be lots of months in the green, but then also a lot of months in the red. But, over time, the hope is that my investments will grow and they'll even out. So, I'm not always going to see lots of red months or lots of green months. It's going to be a balance, but overall, it's the value of my investments will increase. So the market gain percentage. So based on my starting balance in the month, the value of my investments decreased by a percentage. Fee. So the platform that I use charges a fee, and I didn't have to pay any this month. Now, I mean, saying what I'm about to say, I'll probably reveal what platform I am on. But the platform is introducing, I think it's a £4 monthly fee for investors if you invest below £30,000, which I am at the moment. So I think there's been I've seen a lot of things online where people are moving their money to a platform with lower fees because the reason they chose this platform was because of the low fees. So now that there's been this monthly fee introduced, the jumping ship, which they're quite entitled to do. But for me, because I like the platform, because I'm comfortable with it, I am prepared to take that £4 a month hit. Now I know people might disagree with that because you might think, oh well, that's an extra £48 a year that you'll be paying. But I think for me, I've got to do with what I feel comfortable with, and I quite like the platform, so I'll stick with it for now, unless they start ramping up the fees more and more. And then cumulative returns. So this is the amount my investments have increased by since I started my journey, and that is £1,924. So the end balance is £8,915. So you can see it's even though I invested another £50 this month, that was offset and quite a bit by the loss. So the value of my investments going down. What I will say here is that this is my cumulative returns, and when I talk about gain or loss, at the moment it's unrealized, and what that means is I haven't actually sold my investments. So it's like when I talk about gain or loss, that's really just the value of it on paper. Like I don't make a loss until I sell. And here, for example, it's up in value, which is great. So technically, I'm up £1,900, but I haven't actually seen that money physically. Like it hasn't. I haven't sold it, so I haven't went on to use that money for something else. So bringing all the figures in January to December 2024 together, it looks like this. So in January, I started with £6,253. You can see that I started the year with quite healthy purchases, a couple of £100 a month. And then I switched focus to focus a bit more on my emergency fund. But overall, I contributed £1,365 to my investments. The dividends and interest on cash that was accrued over the year was £57.90. Now, what I'll say about this, and I'm not going to talk too much about the specific funds that I invest in, but the dividends all come from the one fund I do hold that pays dividends. But maybe 2 years ago, I decided to move from that fund to a fund that is an accumulation fund where the dividends don't get paid out to me; they get reinvested automatically, and that is more useful for me because at the moment I see these as long-term investments, so I don't really want to manually touch them necessarily. So if once I get it back up to kind of a couple £100, I want to more automate that process where I have a direct debit coming out for £300 a month, say, that automatically gets invested in a particular fund, and then I don't want to then have to touch, like at the moment when these dividends get paid, I then have to manually go in and reinvest them. So it was more useful to me to pick a fund that automatically does that reinvestment. And again, not financial advice, that is just my personal preference. So then the market gain or loss, you can see there's been a lot of green months in 2024 and only 3 months where we've seen my investments go down in value. The biggest gain in a month was £417, which was in November. So the market gain over the year was £1,250. And then now this one, I haven't been very technical about how I've done this one, and I know it's not really the right calculation to do but basically what I did was I divided from a market gain percentage. I divided the increase in my investments over the year, which is 1,250, and then divided that by the beginning balance, and it's 20%. So that could be interpreted, I suppose, that was like a 20% interest rate, or like it accrued by increasing value by 20%. Now that's not technically true in the sense that I contributed throughout the year. So some of the gain that I saw was from investments that I made in 2024. So I did consider, do I use the midpoint between my beginning balance and my end balance and use that as the denominator? But actually, I just thought, why am I being so technical about it? Actually, this gives if I use this as the benchmark going forward and I'm consistent in it, so like in 2025 when I review, as long as I use the same calculation, then I've got that benchmark that I can compare against. And then the fees were £11 over the year. The cumulative returns, again, this is the amount that my investments have increased in value since I started investing, which was in April 2019, was £1,924, and then the end balance is £8,915. I think when I was at the start of January 2024, I had envisaged, I can't even say that word. I've got to use a different word. I had hoped that I'd be at the £10,000 mark by December. Now, unfortunately, I haven't got there, but I've got all the confidence in myself that in 2025, I'm going to move from being a 4-figure investor to a 5-figure investor. So I'm going to get over that £10,000 mark, and then I'll really start to feel like I am investing, and I think, when I look at the start of 2024 and I only had £6,000 invested, the fact now that it's increased to £8,915 is brilliant. But I just really want to keep up that momentum going forward. So the overall figures, and I plot out these figures just because I think it's useful to see what a realistic long-term investment journey is like and the fluctuations that you'll have. So I have been investing for 67 months now, so since April or May 2019, one of the two, and 61% of those months have seen in my investments increase in value, and 39% of months have seen my investments decrease in value. So there's a lot of fluctuation there, which is what is to be expected in the stock market. So the total figures at the moment are that I've contributed nearly £7,000 and I've gained nearly £2,000. And I've got one chart here which just looks at those market gains or losses, and you can just see how they fluctuate over time. And I think now that I'm a few years in, I don't really panic when I see dips each month, because I think it's just part of the process. And then this chart here just looks at how the size of my investments have increased over time. So 2019 to 2021 were kind of very linear. I mean, it's all quite linear to be honest, but it was very linear here because I was contributing £100 a month, and the size of my investments weren't really big enough to show kind of impact of interest, of like increasing value, so to speak. Whereas you can see as my portfolio has increased, so 2023 to 2024, you can see that, there's some bits where it's quite sharp and it goes up, and somewhere it's a bit more flatter, and that's all to do with the impact that I've been seeing in terms of my market gains, because I've got, now a few £1,000 invested. So as I said, plans for 2025 is that I really just want to continue increasing my balance and getting to above £10,000. I really want to switch to, investing £500 a month once I build up my emergency fund. I would love it if by the midpoint of this year I'm investing £500 a month. I think that would be brilliant, and it would really help this balance along. And I think for me personally, again, this is my own personal opinion, I really want to diversify where my wealth is. So at the moment, mine and my partner's wealth is all very much weighted towards our property. So we have around £130,000 of equity on our property, but then we don't have any, we do, sorry, I shouldn't say we don't, because you can see on the screen we do have £9,000 of stocks and shares ISA, and I've got a couple of grand in an emergency fund. But actually it's not very balanced in that sense, where a lot of our wealth is in illiquid assets, which is our property, whereas I'd feel more comfortable if there was more of our wealth in these liquid assets. And I don't really want to cash out, or I don't know, like sell these investments at the moment, because I wanted this to be over the long term, so I see some compound interest impacts to it. However, it is nice to know that, if I needed to, I could sell these investments and have £9,000 in the bank if I needed it. So I'll pause the video there. Let me know in the comments down below if you're on a similar journey, or if you have any thoughts on what I've discussed, and I'll see you on the next video.